Hola a todos,
Hello
bienvenidos una vez
everyone,
más
and
a esta
welcome
nueva edición
once
del
again to
Hackathon de
this new
CyberCamp, que ya
edition
es la
of
sexta.
CyberCamp's Hackathon, which is in
Y
its
nada, quería daros las
sixth
gracias
edition.
a todos
I would like to thank
los
you
que
all
estáis aquí para competir,
for being here to take
por
part
vuestro compromiso,
and to
especialmente
compete,
por esta
especially for
competición,
your
que sé que hay
compromise with
muchos
this
que
competition, because I
repiten de
know
una edición a
many
otra
of you come
y
for every
y
edition.
realmente vivís esta competición
And
como
you
si
do
fuera ya
live this
vuestra
competition
y
as if
venís
it was
aquí
your
a
own,
darlo todo.
and you do come and give it all to the
Como
competition. So
INCIBE,
thanks a
porque
lot.
yo, digamos, trabajo en INCIBE,
I work for
para nosotros es un
INCIBE,
orgullo que
and for
todos los
us, it is
años
a great
tengamos un montón
pride
de propuestas
to have
que se
many
presentan
different
al Hackathon
proposals
y
for the
nos lo
hackathon
pongáis
every
tan
year,
difícil para
and it is
seleccionar quién va a estar aquí en
very good that you
la
make
final
it
de
so
CyberCamp.
difficult to select those who are going to be at the
Este año,
final during CyberCamp.
para los que no lo sepan,
For
bueno, el
those of
Hackathon
you
es una
who
competición
don't know,
de
Hackathon
desarrollo
is
colaborativa
a competition, a
centrada sobre
development,
todo en el ámbito
collaborative
de la
development
ciberseguridad, donde
competition
se tendrán que
in the
crear
field
herramientas
of
y servicios
cybersecurity, and
del
the
ámbito
aim is
del
to
open
create
source
tools
para
and services, open
ayudar
source tools and services to
a la comunidad de ciberseguridad.
help the cybersecurity community.
Quería dar las gracias
So I would like
especialmente
to
al
thank
jurado tan
especially
magnífico que una
the
vez más
great
tenemos
jury that
en
we
esta
have
edición,
once again in
tanto por la
this
parte de la
edition,
organización y
both
jurado,
from the
Mónica Salas, y a
organization,
Raúl Siles
Monica
de
Salas
Dinosec,
and Raúl
a Vicenta
Siles,
Aguilera, a
also
José
Vicente
Servilla,
Aguilera,
Javier Marcos.
José, and
Y
Javier
por mi
Marcos.
parte, no hay mucho más.
There's not much
Entonces vamos a
else to
pasar a
say from
explicar un
me,
poco
so we're
cómo va a
going to
ser la
start
dinámica de
explaining
esta
what the
competición.
dynamics of this competition is going to be.
Buenas tardes.
Good
Ya
afternoon.
me ha presentado Óscar.
Well,
Quiero
Oscar has
reiterar
already
también pues,
introduced
la
me. I would
satisfacción que
like
supone veros
to
aquí
also
después de tantos meses.
reiterate
Arrancamos
the
por allí por febrero
satisfaction that it is
mandando ya
to
los
see
primeros
you all.
mensajes al grupo de
We
Telegram, que
started
por cierto
in
tiene una gran
February
acogida.
when we sent
Así que
the
bueno,
first
soy la que
messages
está
through
respondiendo a la
Telegram,
mayoría de
which
vuestras
had a
preguntas.
very good
Y
welcome.
nada, y me alegro
And
mucho
I've
de
been the one
teneros
who's been
aquí.
answering most
Y
of your
bueno, pues
questions,
en
and I'm really
principio,
happy to
nada,
have
Raúl,
you all
vete pasando
here.
esto porque esta
So,
parte la queremos hacer bastante
Raúl, we
rápida
can
para que
skip this
podáis
because we're
empezar
going to do it very
vosotros
quickly so
a
you can
presentar cuanto
start
antes.
presenting
Enhorabuena
yourselves
por
as
haber
soon
sido
as possible.
seleccionados porque, como ha dicho Óscar,
Congratulations on
el nivel
having
se nota mucho
been
de edición en
selected,
edición,
because as
que cada
Oscar
vez hay
has
más
been
gente interesada
saying,
en
we
participar
see
y hay
from
proyectos
edition
buenos
to
que se tienen que
edition
quedar
that
en la
there's a really
cuneta.
high level, that many
Nos
people who
satisface
have
particularmente
excellent
pues, ver
projects that
equipos que
do
repiten
not make it to the
participación. Tenemos
final.
aquí
We're very happy to
equipos, los
see
4 primeros clasificados del año
teams that
pasado repiten
require
edición.
the
Tenemos un
repeat
equipo que ha
in
ganado
this
varias ediciones del Hackathon, el equipo
edition.
IT, que también andan por aquí
We have
un poquillo
one
diezmados
team that
este
has
año, pero bueno,
won
vienen dispuestos a
several
darlos todos. Y
editions of
sobre
this
todo
hackathon,
también el
although
ver
there's not
que
as
por
many
primera vez
of
tenemos
them as
proyectos que han
there
repetido,
were
que
in
están
the past.
repitiendo
And we also seen that
participación
for the first
para
time
mejorar, evolucionar la herramienta que
participation is
presentaron en
repeated
otras
for
ediciones.
certain
Con
projects
lo
so that
cual
they can
consideramos que para
evolve
la
and
comunidad de
perfection
ciberseguridad es
the
una gran
tool that they
ventaja y
presented
una
in
buena
other
noticia
editions. So
porque
we think
probablemente
that
de
for
aquí
the cyber
salgan,
community this
acaben
is
saliendo
really good
herramientas
news,
que
because
sirvan
we
de
are
mucho
very
a
sure
toda
that
la
from
comunidad.
here we will have excellent tools that will
Bueno,
do a
pues el
great service
Hackathon,
to our
los que ya repetís
community.
ya sabéis lo que es,
Well,
lo que ha
those of
contado un
you who've
poco
been here
Óscar, ¿no? Se
before
trata de
know
un evento
what this is
presencial,
about, but
colaborativo para
Hackathon
desarrollar vuestras
is
herramientas sobre ciberseguridad.
on-site
Y
and
una vez más,
collaborative
pues insistimos, nos gusta insistir en que la
competition
idea
to
detrás de todo
develop
esto es que sea solo el
tools on
comienzo, que sepáis de aquí
cybersecurity.
con
And
ganas
our
de no solo
idea
de
is
venir
that this
ahora
is
a mostrar
only
vuestros
the
conocimientos de
beginning,
seguridad,
that you
a
leave
mejorar vuestra
here not
herramienta o a
only to
implementarla de
improve your
cero,
tool,
sino
to
con la idea
improve
de
your
que en este
knowledge as well,
poquito
but
tiempo del que se
really
dispone,
with
pues
the
salga algo ya,
idea
una
that in the
semilla,
little
que luego se
time
pueda
we
ir
have
evolucionando
here,
tanto por parte
this
vuestra
plants
como
a
por parte del
seed
resto de
that
la
will then
comunidad.
be
En esa
evolved
línea
both from
intentamos hacer
here and
esfuerzos
from the
de
rest of
año
the
en año para que así
community.
sea.
So
Y
every
sobre
year we
todo, uno
make
de los
efforts
objetivos
to
es
make sure that this
atraer sobre la
happens.
competición
And one
el
of the
interés
aims is
como un
for this
botón más o
competition to
un
attract
eslabón
the
más para atraer
interest, be
el interés sobre
another
los proyectos de código abierto y
part
más
of the
talento
chain
internacional, que a fin de
that
cuentas pues, es
attracts
lo que persigue.
talent at a national level, which is what
Bueno,
we are
el
trying to do
jurado
from
tendrá oportunidad
INFIBE.
de
So
presentarse
the
luego. Por
jury
la
will be
parte
able
que
to
nos
introduce
toca
themselves later,
agradeceros
but
porque la
from
parita que se
us,
pega al jurado,
just
vosotros trabajáis un
thank you
montón,
so
pero
much. You
creedme que
work a
detrás de la
lot,
labor del
but
jurado
believe that
también hay
the
horas y horas
jury do have
que son
to
profesionales
put
vamos,
in
de más
loads
alto
of
nivel,
hours.
así
They
que nos
are
alegra
very
mucho
high-level professionals,
contar
so
año tras
we're
año con
very
ellos.
happy
Este
to
año
be able to
incorporamos
count
a Javier Marcos
them
y
into
nada,
our
luego
project.
tendremos
This
oportunidad
year we have Javier Marcos, who has joined the jury as well. So this initial part is the introductions. We call this the number one stage, and we don't have that much time today, but basically what every team is going to do is have an initial presentation. They will have 8 minutes, and we have drawn the order of presentation. You will have to present your tool when you come up to the stage. You will talk about functionalities and capabilities that your developments will bring in, how the cybersecurity community can benefit from this, and anything that you find relevant. So basically, you just have to sell your project, because this stage one, although it's not as important as the other stages, of course, but it is also important that you know how to defend your project, and that you are able to tell in a very realistic way what you're coming here to do, and then compare it with what you've done eventually. So what we're going to evaluate is the application of your proposal, originality, quality of the presentation, answers to questions. So today is all about breaking the ice. For many of you, it's the first time and you're very nervous. So don't worry so much, because what comes out of this presentation is not going to be decisive on the result of the hackathon. So do not worry about that. So the order of presentation has not been updated, but they know it themselves. Who was the first team? Raise your hands here. So you know team number 2, then as soon as they are finishing with their time, you have to be able to come onto the stage. So as we've done in the last 2 editions, the panel is going to be anonymized. We're not going to give marks today. Stage 1 starts with the presentations, but it's going to last throughout tomorrow as well, and the jury will come round to see you and to ask you questions to see how you're focusing your proposal, and that's where the final marks will come from. So we will say the position, then the team's code, but we're not going to show either the marks or any other information that allows to identify who the team are. Why? Because sometimes some teams think that they're well behind another team, and then it turns out that actually they didn't have to be down because of that, because they could make up for it in the end. The order of the final presentations will be directly the reverse of these first presentations. So those who have started number 1 today will be number 12 for the final presentations, and so on and so forth. So this is all. Good luck to all of you, loads of energy, and when we finish the presentations, we will go back to the hackathon room just to continue with the questions to teams. And I haven't mentioned it before, but the questions that you ask other teams or whatever you add to those teams will be bonus points towards your final score. And as you will see tomorrow, we'll show you the criteria. You can even reach 100%, and then there will be bonus points, and we'll show you the system of bonus points tomorrow. But one of the things that will give you bonus points is what you add to the presentations, and because we only can use this room until 8, we'll go afterwards to the hackathon room so we can continue with the questions, and you can make suggestions, you can add anything. If you've already worked on something similar, you might even say, oh, don't do this because I've been there and it was crazy, just maybe take this other approach, because we do value the spirit of community, which is what we basically want to create here. So that is all. Once we are done there, if any of you would like to come for a drink afterwards so that we all get to know each other better, then I'll see you at the end. Good luck to everyone.
de cara ir subiendo el primer equipo, así optimizamos.
Yeah, we
De
can
cara
have the
a
first team on the
las
stage to
presentaciones,
optimize
¿vale?
time.
Sabéis que todos
Now, when it
tenéis
comes
aquí
to
la
presentations,
vuestra.
you know that you'll have your
Están más o
presentation
menos
ready here.
clasificadas por
They
nombre,
should be
con lo cual no
classified
podéis
more or less
pasar.
by name, so you will be able to see
Tenéis
it.
por aquí el micro, os repartís
You've
como
got the
queréis hacer
microphone here. You can share
exposición del
the
proyecto.
time amongst yourselves as you wish.
Tenéis también un contador
You
aquí
also
de 8
have
minutos. Nosotros lo
a
iremos
countdown
controlando
here
también.
for
Tenemos
10
que ser un poco
minutes,
estrictos con el
and
tiempo,
we're
máximo
going to have
estos
to
10
be
minutos en
strict
la sala.
with
O sea
the
que
time.
entendedlo, os daremos un margen, pero pequeño.
So we will give you a little margin, and the time you have is 8 minutes, by the way, not 10.
El mando
We'll have
funciona
to be
al revés,
strict
lo
with
veréis
that.
que lo pone ahí en rosa fosforito. Es decir,
The
que
remote
se
works
avanza en las
in
presentaciones dando
reverse
para abajo,
order. So you
no
have,
para
if
arriba,
you want
¿vale?
to advance, you have to press down in order to press up, just so you know.
Vale, buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon,
Nos ha
everyone.
tocado empezar, pero
So we
bueno,
have to be
buenas tardes
first.
para estar en casa.
Good afternoon to
Nosotros
those
somos el
of you
equipo
who are
2
watching
Dash to
through
Continue
streaming. We
y
are
os venimos
2
a
DAS
presentar la
to
herramienta
continues,
de Sísifo.
and we want to introduce Sisypho today.
En el equipo somos
In our
Jorge,
team, we've got
Alex,
Jorge,
José, y
Alex,
yo que soy
Jose,
Ismael,
and
y
myself,
venimos
Ismael,
de
and
parte del equipo
we
de
come
I+D+I de
on behalf
Entel
of
Inotech Security.
the research
Vale, ¿qué es
team
Sísifo,
of
no?
Innotech Security.
Sísifo lo hemos pensado como una
So what
herramienta
is
que va a
Sisypho?
integrar
It's a
diferentes
tool that is going
herramientas, valga la
to
redundancia, ¿no?
comprise
de
different
análisis dinámico de
tools
seguridad
for
con un
dynamic
entorno de integración
security
continua. El
analysis
objetivo
in
de esto es
continuous
que,
integration
bueno,
environment. So
se
our
tenga una
objective
visión global de la seguridad
is to have a global
antes
vision
de
of
la puesta en
security
producción automática de las
before
aplicaciones.
we start producing automatically the applications.
¿Por qué hemos pensado esto? Es
Why
más bien
have we
porque
thought about
en los
this?
entornos de integración continua
Mostly
tenemos
because
multitud de
in
herramientas para valorar
continuous
la
integration
calidad
environments, we have
del
different
código, ¿no?
tools
Podemos
to
lanzar
assess
testes
the quality
unitarios,
of code. We
podemos
have unit
mirar
tests.
con otras
We
herramientas
have
si
different
cumplen
tools that help
los
us
umbrales de
to
cobertura a los
check
tests,
whether
podemos
they
lanzar herramientas de
have
análisis
coverage
estático de seguridad,
thresholds,
pero
whether
nos
the
faltaba un
code,
poquito
the
esa
security
parte
code is
de
static,
análisis dinámico,
but we
¿no?
still needed some
Con Sísifo lo que
dynamic
intentamos
analysis. So
conseguir
what
un
we're
poco
trying
es
to achieve with
tener
Sisypho
intento, ¿no? Por
is
así decirlo,
to
de lo que haría un
have
auditor a la hora de hacer
the
un
intent,
pentest.
what an
Decimos intento
auditor
porque
would
sabemos que
do
estas herramientas tienen
if they want to
ciertas
do a pen
limitaciones,
test. And I'm
pero,
saying intent
un
or
acercamiento
a
que creemos que
try,
puede
just
ser
an
muy
approach,
beneficioso.
because they have many different tools. But
Lo
we
hemos
think this could
pensado
be
de
very
cara
beneficial.
a todo tipo de públicos,
And this is
porque
aimed at
desde
all
empresas más
sorts
pequeñitas
of
o con menos presupuesto,
audiences,
que a lo
from
mejor no se
smaller
pueden
companies
permitir
with
una auditoría
smaller
final antes de
budgets
la
as
puesta en
well that
producción,
cannot
o
afford
que
to have a
no les da
final
tiempo, entonces
audit
pues
before
con Sísifo lo
starting
tendrían
production,
muy
or
barato,
do
¿no?
not have time to do
Y
it. With
lo podrían
Sisypho, it would
utilizar.
be
Pero
very
además las grandes empresas o
economic,
grandes
and they would
equipos
be able
lo
to
podrían aprovechar para
use it.
lanzar
But
Sísifo
big companies and big
por las
teams
noches,
could
en el momento de
actually
las
run
builds
Sisypho
nocturnas,
at
y
night
así
during
ir encontrando
night
fallos durante el
builds,
proceso de desarrollo
and so find
que luego a la
failures
hora
during
del pentest final,
the
antes de la puesta en producción,
development
ahorraría
process
mucho tiempo de
that
el auditor va, mira,
would save a lot of
volvemos a
time
arreglar,
at
volvemos a mirar y así
the pen
continuamente hasta
test
que la aplicación ya
stage.
queda
When
dentro de
the
unos
auditor
márgenes
checks
que considera
something,
aceptables,
finds a
pues con este
failure, they have to check it.
intentaríamos
So with this, what we would
mitigar
do
todo ese
is
tiempo y ahorrar ese dinero, ¿no?
reduce all the time and, of course, save money.
Nosotros vamos a hacer esta
So
integración continua
we're going
con
to
GitLab,
have this
y
continuous
sí es cierto que
integration
GitLab
with
tiene una
GitLab.
un plugin de pago para hacer esto
And GitLab
usando
has
Zap. Nosotros nuestra idea
pay
es
plugin
integrar
using
cuantas
Zap.
más
Our
número de
idea
herramientas
is to
posible
integrate as many
para
tools
así,
as possible
intentar que los falsos negativos que siempre existen, porque todas estas
to
herramientas
have the
no
false
pueden encontrar información, pues
negatives that
integrando varias,
we
intentar de
always
esa
have,
manera
because these tools
no
cannot find all of them. If
cubrir
we
el
have
máximo
several tools, as I
posible,
was
¿vale?
saying, then we could
Y os
find
dejo
as
con mi
many as
compañero
possible.
Jorge.
And now I'm giving the floor to Jorge.
Buenas.
Hello.
Yo voy a hablar de
Well,
lo que vamos a hacer
I'm going to
durante
talk
los días.
about what we're going to do during this
Lo que vamos a
hackathon.
hacer es un entorno de integración
We're going to
continua
create a
basado en
continuous
usando
integration
GitLab. Entonces vamos a
environment
construir
using
distintas
GitLab,
fases.
and
Las
we'll
primeras
have
van a ser
different
las
stages.
que se suelen hacer en un entorno de
The
integración
first
continua,
ones
como
will be
son
those that we
compilado del
usually use in this
código,
kind of
los
environment,
testes
compilating the
unitarios,
code, running
los
unit
análisis
tests, analyzing, well, static analysis,
Luego, la parte que
and
nos
so on.
corresponde a nosotros, que es el
And
todos
then
los
what
análisis,
we do, which is all the
las
dynamic
herramientas,
analysis, so running
de análisis
and
dinámico.
launching
Entonces, en
the
esta fase,
dynamic analysis tools.
Lo que vamos a hacer es generar
So in
distintos
this
jobs,
stage, what we're going to do
para,
is have
en estos jobs vamos a lanzar
different
las herramientas dentro de
jobs
un contenedor Docker,
and have
en una
these in a
infraestructura
Docker
de tipo Linux.
container
Estos
in a
contenedores van a
Linux
tener todas las
infrastructure.
herramientas
Now,
que van a
these
lanzar
containers
los
will have
ataques
all the tools
sobre,
and will launch the attacks on
el código que queremos desplegar en
the
producción.
code that we want to develop in production.
Aquí los desarrolladores van a poder
So
configurar las herramientas que
developers
quieren
will
usar.
be able to configure the tools that they want to
Como por
use. For
ejemplo, en
example,
este
in
caso,
this
que es
case,
WP
we've used WP
Luego, cada
Scan
herramienta va a
and
tener
Arachne.
que lanzarse sobre una
And then
aplicación.
every tool
Esto
will
¿por qué?
have
Porque
to
si
go
lanzamos estas herramientas lanzan
on
muchísimas
one
peticiones.
application.
Si
Why?
lanzásemos
Because
todas
they
como
send a lot of requests,
contra
and
las
if we
migraciones podríamos tirarlas.
launched
Entonces no
all of
podríamos
them
realizar
at the same time, then we wouldn't be able to do the analysis because we would always have
Luego las
some sort
herramientas
of
van a poder ser desplegadas
failure.
también dentro de un
Now,
contenedor
the
Docker
tools will
o,
also be able to be deployed in a Docker container
en el entorno en el que se quiera desplegar.
and also in the environment that they want
Luego, una vez
that anyone
finalizada
wants
esta
to
fase,
deploy it. Now, once this
haremos
stage
una
is
fase
over,
final donde
what we'll do
recogeremos
is
todos los
have a
resultados
final
de estas
stage where we
herramientas
will have
y
gathered all the results
las
that
mapearemos en
these
un
tools
código
give us,
común
and
disponible para
we'll have
nosotros
them in a
que,
common area that it's understandable to all of us,
para luego poder validar si el
so we
test
can then
de todas las herramientas
validate
ha
whether
cumplido
the
lo que
test
queremos.
of all the tools has
Para
fulfilled
validar
what
este
we
test,
wanted it to do. In order to
obviamente el
validate
desarrollador
this
va a tener que
test, the
configurar una
developer
serie de
will have to
vulnerabilidades para
configure
decirnos
a series
cuántas
of
vulnerabilidades
vulnerabilities
el test
and
quiere
tell
que
us
nos pasen.
how many
Por ejemplo, definir si
vulnerabilities
quiere
the
que
test doesn't
una
want.
vulnerabilidad
We don't want the
crítica
test
pare,
to
entonces desplegar en
run.
producción.
So if
Todo
we
esto lo va a
want
tener que
with a critical
configurar,
vulnerability for the test to stop,
en este job.
then we will have to configure it in this job.
Luego, una vez finalizado
Now,
todo el mapeo de
Once
resultados, todas las
we're
herramientas que
done
tenemos,
mapping
al
all the
usuario,
results for
pues, al
all
desarrollador
the
lo que le vamos a
tools that we
mostrar
have,
en
we
este
will show the
entorno
developer
GitLab
in
son todas las
a
vulnerabilidades
GitLab
que
environment
hemos encontrado
is
en
all
todos
the
los análisis,
vulnerabilities,
agrupadas por el tipo,
all the weaknesses that we have found,
indicando la seguridad
grouped
que
by
tiene y
type,
en la URL
showing
que les ha
the
dado esta
security
vulnerabilidad.
and the URL that this vulnerability has
Y por
given them.
último, con toda la
And
configuración que nos hayan
finally,
hecho,
with all the
calcularemos el umbral y
configuration, we
veremos si
will calculate the
el test
threshold,
de todas las herramientas ha
and we
pasado
will be
o
able to see
si
if the tools
ha
have
fallado.
all
Entonces,
passed
si ha
the test
fallado,
or whether they
pararíamos
have
la
failed.
subida a producción, por ejemplo.
If they have failed, then we
Tendríamos que
would
corregir estas
stop
vulnerabilidades y
production,
volver a lanzar
for example, and these vulnerabilities would have to be corrected and then launch the analysis once again. So this is what we will be doing these days.
Así que muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Las preguntas para poder optimizar el tiempo de Sara las haremos luego al final.
Questions in order to make most of the room, we'll do that at the end. So team 2 should be coming up, so please write down your questions so that you can ask them to the right team at the end.
Buenas tardes, nosotros somos
Good
InnoSVQ,
afternoon. We're InnoSVQ, part of InnoTech in Seville, and we're going to present Red Ops. It's a navigation tool. We auditors in cybersecurity in the office in Seville, and we do analysis of vulnerabilities and test intrusions in our day-to-day work. in these intrusions, we realized that enumeration processes have a number of issues. There are a number of tools, and each tool gives a different result. And each one gives you a different exit as it wishes. And there is a problem when you have many hosts and different entities to pass information from one entity to the next. And you're given 3 patches, and in order to use that information, you have to send it to one tool or another. So with many tools, this becomes very, very complex. You have a lot of information that's difficult to organize, because you might be working on the same assets over and over again because you have the same information. So to search for the information is very difficult rather than relaunching it. This is a waste of time. So a RedOps tool would be a solution for that. It's a platform that allows the auditor to collect information, but also to organize the information. So in reports, the auditor goes into RedOps and searches for the information for the application that's been launched previously. We will be using Python and Docker to make it scalable. So depending on the number of audits that you have, in order to scale the containers in order to have a larger or smaller quantity of work. So what is not RedOps? There are only a number of assets based on the auditor. We're going to keep exploit or anything of that. It just helps the auditor. The design is in 3 parts: the web, the interface for the users and the auditor, some agents and some models. The audits interact with the web and they send tasks to the agents, and depends on the agent and the task that they have to do, they execute one model or another. Auditors can interact, and the audits are created, and the auditor adds the organization that needs to be audited, for example, in Cibe, and the assets such as Cibe.s or any other assets that he comes across. So the jobs are sent to the agents, and this is a enumeration of domains in this particular case. This information reaches the agent, and the agent executes it by searching for the domains. As the results come in, this information is returned to RedOps, and in real time, the results can be seen. The current status is that we have the skeleton area of the web, and the web sockets that are prepared for the UI for the results. During the hackathon, we're going to continue developing the web and the agents and all the models associated with the process. The modules that we would like to implement is search for branches, and also search for domains in our organization, or search for scanning or anything that can be done in these different processes. Not only in an active way, but also in public sources. For example, to see if there are credentials that have been liquidated. As a bonus, we would like to implement, if there is time, the proxy socks as part of the tool. So if you use a tool, you can have an internal part of the organization. So this would not only work externally, but also an audit within the organization. And also in the future, an audit might be able to undergo an audit process, and also to enumerate. And other tasks, such as exploiting an asset, instead of having an inverse shell, it should give us an inverse shell RedOps and share that with different auditors. And this would be a kind of tunnel to share the information. For example, a packet that has been found previously in the enumeration and continue developing that platform so that it can exist right across the audit. Here we have the section of the questions and answers, but that will be for afterwards. And here we have some links if you'd like some more information about us.
Vale, ha sido rápido.
Okay, let's go ahead. Good afternoon. Thank you very much in the first instance to the jury for selecting our tool. It's a tool called All Intelligence. This is us. They were students of mine, Rafa and Rafael. I'm Edu, and I'm a teacher and also got a consultancy, and we three of us work there. So, talking about the functions and the benefits of the tool in this program and what we can add to the community. What we have seen is that many clients that require a general analysis without getting into a detailed audit, or that even some auditors to know what the level of position is, a more general analysis. So within the tool, there are two ambits, a more technical side, information that we're going to give to the tool, a domain, and we can take information from that tool. And then there's the digital entity, which is also very important, the assets. In this case, it's seeing the issues in terms of digital identity and in terms of attacks, the issues that could take place if there was a direct attack. There is a report for the end user, and now I'll explain how this tool works. First of all, what we're going to give to the tool is a domain, and there's also a technical analysis from which we'll take some information, ports and services that are active, geolocalization, and all those kinds of services where we have that IP generic information with different services from third parties and some specific analysis that can be manual, such as email from services and CMSs. And then we have the other side, which is sometimes left to one side when analyzers go into the digital side of obtaining information from different people within the company, we often find that there are many errors in this field, many vulnerabilities. Here we have different email addresses. If there are leaks of information, associated mobile numbers for people within the company, other possible email addresses, and the source from which this information has been received. When we know the source, sometimes this information is requested to be removed. So if I find a domain using an email address, I can do the same analysis. I can see if there's a link, and if there are other sources, and see if there's a profile that is very detailed regarding the different people within the organization. We have the general side on the technical side in terms of the domain, but we're going to concentrate on the digital side with different services. As we're saying, we use different services. We're going to use Python and Flask in terms of the interface and in development. We're going to use Shodan, MaxMind for localization, and Email Hunter for the email, Dehashed in terms of the links. It's a good tool and it gives good results, and people. We're going to interact in order to do manual checks that we will perform depending on what we obtain. We'll have lots of units of information, and we need to obtain that in order to sort it out, in order to obtain the information that we need. In terms of security, in terms of domain, we have the technical side. We just have the attack vectors on the exposed services. And on the audit side, we have the digital side of the people within the organization to see who they are, what roles they have, and what other failures there are, what vectors of entry there are directed towards them that there may exist. Once we have those units of information, the tool processes the information depending on the items that we have, and our aim is to generate intelligence. If we use a pen test or a security analysis, we'd lose a lot more time analyzing all the different services and all the channels of information, rather than generating the actual intelligence to generate the end report. So who's our audience? Companies who could use this on the technical side using the actual tool, other companies from inside in order to offer services, or users in the hacking community, pen testers, intelligence, or people who work in this field. Similar projects, we've all used Spiderfoot, Maltego, and similar, and all they have is lots of information that we have to select. In this case, we want the information to be very precise, and we don't want to waste a lot of time analyzing it. We want to go direct to key information to generate the report, such that in a general way, we have a general overview of the information that the company wants to get, so that we can go a step closer to an internal audit, whether this is an internal or external, and much more in depth. As I said, we're going to use Python because it's easy to use and it's global. We're going to develop it from scratch, and we're going to use a number of APIs, and we'll have manual checking based on the different vulnerabilities. And in the end, we will connect the information and obtain a report that is general for both sides. That's the summary. We have different units of information from the technical side and the digital identity, put it through the tool, and in the end, we generate an intelligence report. That's what we aim to do over the coming days. Thank you very much. Good luck, everybody. And Monica said the spirit here is to share the information, and sharing information, we multiply information. thank you very much to my colleagues because they've helped us to achieve the apps that we're going to be using in order to develop the tool. Thank you very much.
Hola.
Hello.
Buenas a todos. Nosotros somos
Hello everyone, we are
Venimos de la Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha.
KM11, we come from the University of Castilla-La Mancha and we're doing a PhD within the Institute for Research, Computing Research in Albacete. We think this is very important because at the end of the day we all work in cybersecurity. Carlos focuses on blockchain, another one in malware and another one in forensics, and myself I focus on networks. But here you have a little index of what we're going to see. We're going to start by introducing and motivate and see why this tool is being developed. We also do a state of the art, so you can see the research background that we have. We also analyze the proposal, the technologies we're going to use, and our planning. So why this tool? Well, basically, because we need to write papers. Simple as that. The issue that we find is that when we want to analyze malware, if we want to do it in a real environment, we have a very heterogeneous environment, many devices, many networks, and for malware, architecture makes it really difficult to use the same sample for everyone. So what we do is we're going to try to put together a group of tools to automatize this process. What is our audience? Well, basically ourselves. We're going to be benefited immediately, obviously, but this is good for any analyst and anyone who is doing research in malware. And basically, we are either the only or one of the very few platforms that are open source, multi-architecture, focused in classification and clustering, both from dynamic and static features. Now, what alternatives do you find to us? There are some, they're very good. If you see these tools, they're very, very good, but they don't have the features that we need. For example, Lemon Sandbox is very useful. It's very similar to our tool, but it's only for x86 and 64. And I think it is paid as well. Detox is very similar as well, but it's more focused on traffic analysis. And you have Cuckoo, which you can actually launch, but you have to do it manually for every instance. And then you have Falcon, which is also paid, but it's also very good. So what are features and functionalities? We're going to be able to support different architectures. One of the things that we've already done is compilating these machines. We have PowerPC, Mix, ARM, x86, x64. We also characterize malware dynamically. We're going to focus on n-grams right now, but we could actually go a bit further if we have time, but we're going to do a clustering of malware. Now, what are our features? First of all, modularity. We have a very segmented tool, and it's also not very heavy, so it won't have many computing requirements. Now, concerning security, we've already introduced this, but what we're looking for is characterizing and classifying malware for different architectures automatically. Now, when it comes to technologies, the pipeline that we're going to use is segmented, as you can see in this slide, and we're going to start with a sample that can be for any of the architectures. We're going to have a static analysis to extract the headings and know to which virtual machine we have to launch it and obtain the dynamic characteristics that the features that we're going to use afterwards. So we are going to use 2 radars, Python, and with those we have static features, and we know how we have to execute it. So depending on the tools that we have and the machines that we have compilated, we will send it to the corresponding machine, we will execute, and then we will get the results. Up to here, very easy to say, not as easy to do. And then from there, we will have some traces of the attack. So like this, in raw, we don't get anything, so we need a dynamic analysis. So we, basically, this consists in being based on n-grams. We think this is feasible because it's not very complex from a technical point of view, and we think they work really well according to the papers and state of arts that we've read so far. Now, once we have the n-grams, we're going to have a clusterization and visualization. So if you have these n-grams, how many are like to you, how many families, and how can we visualize it? I think it's very interesting, at least for us, to have a global vision of which samples are alike. So this could be very representative from a research point of view, but what really matters is how many similar samples to every different thing do I have, how they are evolving in every different architecture. So what have we done so far? We haven't done any coding, but we're not starting from zero or from scratch right now. My colleague has been compilating sometimes with a bit of a headache, machines in build grid to be lifted afterwards. We have chosen and have had a first contact with most of the technologies we're going to use, and we've been doing some concept tests, although we don't have a utility code. Then we have a design of the pipeline, which is at a conceptual stage right now, as we've shown you. And also something that is important is the design of the workflow that we're going to do as a team. Now, what do we still have to do? Well, almost everything. We have to implement modules for static analysis, execution, dynamic analysis, clustering, visualization. We have to integrate the modules, and we have to evaluate them with different samples. And finally, if we have time, then the documentation, which would be absolutely great. Well, this was for questions, but we're going to do this later. So this is it. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, somos Broken Pipe.
Good evening, we are Broken Pipe, and we're going to introduce Scylla, which is using machine learning, and we've done some testing, because otherwise it wouldn't be viable, but we don't have a functional code yet. So, team members are Alejandro Guerrero, Carlos, Mario, who's not here right now, and myself, who I'm going to be working on the Scylla nucleus. So as I was saying, this is a web application firewall with machine learning, which is based in the usual things, but also in response analysis in order to implement SQL injection and to analyze and detect the errors that may arise. It's also based on analysis of HTTP methods, and this is not aimed for blocking petitions, but we will also have Entropia. We have ID, which has an average length of 3. If something else, then it wouldn't make sense. So who is Scylla for? For anyone who would like to have a safer web application, or any students who would like to see applications of machine learning to security. It is not built for any specific server because, as I was saying, works in an inverse process regardless of the server or the client. You can have a configuration and then it works. This is how Scylla's proxy works. It receives the petition, it analyzes and it might block it if it finds that it is malicious and sends them to the server if it is malicious, and otherwise to the client. We want to do in Django as well, analyze the configuration files and do petition statistics, those which we have blocked as well. We haven't really thought about this yet because we haven't done so much so far, and we think that as we advance and we progress, we will be able to figure this out a bit more. Now, we have similar projects such as Mod Security, and we differentiate from them because we take a new series of parameters apart from the usual ones, and we have machine learning. What is similar to Mod Security, Scylla works in real time, but we don't need to change configuration. We do delete dangerous characters, we do decode URL, and we analyze the post as well. Now, machine learning is going to be done between Carlos and Alejandro. We haven't been able to add many pictures because we sent it before we actually started doing more research, so they're going to talk rather than send pictures. Thank you. Hello, my name is Alejandro Guerrero, and I'm going to be working with machine learning. And basically, we've been doing research. We started looking into machine learning algorithms, and we found that the one which could suit our application most would be that of cluster. These algorithms work grouping data in subgroups, and if one piece of data belongs to the same subgroup, then it means that they are similar. So basically, the data that will arrive to the proxy we will extract different features in numerical data because we're going to represent points in a graph. And because we are using numerical data, then we will have to extract strategic numerical data from the information that comes to the site, because depending on the features, the algorithm will be more or less efficient when it comes to representing it in a graph. So what we've been looking into is KNN, and also Kamins. We're still looking into algorithms that we can use for development, considering features. We've thought so far Entropia, the percentage of special and alphanumerical characters, but we're still looking into this. I think you all know how these algorithms work here. And what we're going to do is initiate a pre-configured data set that we will have trained with public tools, and from that data that reach those tools, we will get a way of analyzing and representing those points. They're not going to be 2 or 3 dimensional, but rather we're going to use a point with a lot of coordinates. And what we're going to do is we're going to classify that data in different clusters, and as we keep adding data, then we will keep adding points to that graph. I think more or less you know how machine learning works, but as we add points to that graph, then the library will calculate the distance between them, and it will know whether a specific piece of data belongs to a cluster or to another one. So let's imagine that one cluster is for malicious and the other one is for non-malicious users. So we will be able to analyze whether it's closer to one cluster or the other, and then therefore infer whether it is malicious or not. And then once we realize whether this is or not an attack, then we will know what we will be adding. And so the machine will be learning as we go. So we want to use the library in Python, sklearn. And now I'm going to give the floor to Carlos, who's going to explain the limitations. Well, as we know, machine learning has its limitations, and specifically for this domain, what we're going to do is we're going to try to group the data by families and attacks, amongst other. We cannot try to identify a specific exploit, because if we're trying to upload a file to a specific point, we can see if it has some sort of malicious feature, but we're not going to be able to detect the URL. We're going to look into the type of family, and of course machine learning has its limitations. We'll have to see how this escalates, because if our server is getting thousands of petitions every second, then we will need to figure out which algorithm is more useful when asking the database. And of course there's poisoning, because you can poison the database that you're using for machine learning, and obviously that would modify the groups. It could start modifying groups, and maybe something that was malicious before because it was well trained, then suddenly it shows as non-malicious because it's been contaminated and hence it has been moved to a different group. And well, I think that's more or less it. I don't know if anyone else in the team has something to say. Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon. We're from Antique team. We come to present our project. We've called it SOT, S-O-T. Thank you for selecting this project, and we'd like to tell you a bit about the idea that we've got, what we'll do in the hackathon. It's the first time for me. For the other members of the team, it is not, and they have won on other occasions. So obviously it's a challenge for us to be here once again, to participate once again, and to try and do it our very best and enjoy the event. Our idea is to control the world of IoT, which has grown very much over the last few years. So domotics, both at the home level and industry, there are millions and billions of devices that are connected to the internet, and they are not controlled. We have light bulbs, switches, and anything is connected to internet these days. And these devices can be infected. They have a number of issues. They have abnormal behavior on occasions, and this is the objective, what we would like to achieve here in this project. It's monitoring those devices. So to be preventing physical risks because these devices are connected to the electric power in our homes, because obviously a failure could cause an issue, and this would be the second part of our monitoring. There could be issues in terms of, for example, of a fire. A light bulb that's working incorrectly could cause issues, and that's related to fire. And also the logic side of things, we need to control that. Many of the devices that we have in a network can be connected to clouds, and we have no control over them. All different types of networks, and they are connected to us in home, and they connect to the different servers, and we can't control this in any way at all. These devices over the last few years have been part of the botnets that have attacked the DDoSs, a number of webs, because these devices are connected to a very fast network, the one that we have at home, and there are millions of them, and we have hundreds of these devices, and they are able to go through the connection that we have in our homes with no issues at all. The objectives that we have in mind is to do a project that is very, very simple. The idea that it should be easy for the user, so that anybody can use it on their desktop and run any device and control what is going on in his or her network. So the logical risks, which would be the internet side, and also the physical threats. So it's controlling the behavior of devices so that they work appropriately, and so that users can detect any abnormal behavior, any issues, or anything that is not working as it should be working, and so that these devices can be within our systems and are controlled both inside and outside the network. So outside the network, it would be our system, would be through some kind of connection, which is outside our system. The target audience would be for the final consumer, mainly people who don't have a lot of knowledge, because one of the main risks is the fact that these devices have become common devices that we have in our homes. But the people who have them are not people with a technical profile, and they have no concepts of technical security or control over the network in their homes. Simply, they have a light bulb, they connect it in their homes, and then they have the domotics system is working in the home, Alexa or Google, whatever they have at home. So this would be on the security side of the project. However, the project that we want to do is not only in terms of the domotics that we have at home. It's also in terms of monitoring different types of networks that we have and different protocols and the activity going on in these devices. As I said, the main aim is to help people who have no prior knowledge of this subject matter and who can easily have, in a notification, for example, control over their devices and actually to act on those devices at any given time if there is something that is going wrong and that this is unexpected and is out of control, so that these people can control any of these issues that arise. There are currently different tools that are available. We've been having a look at these, and there are different projects that do different things, each of which do their own thing. There are controls of network activity, for example. This is part of the project. And there are other things more related to the different devices we have in our homes, but it's not a overall general project. We want to look at behavior both in and out of the network, and we also want this to extend outside the network, for example, in a Wi-Fi or radio frequency, in order to be able to control those devices in the different aspects of the network within our homes. As we said, the profile of the user is a person who has no idea of this, so it must be easy to install and easy to control it over time without any prior knowledge of computer security. We want to use KISS methodology to make it simple. In terms of notifications, it will be from Systray. We do not have anything ready. We haven't brought anything with us. We're starting from scratch. We would like to build an app so that can be used on mobile devices. But in any case, we're going to be looking at operability. Our idea is to start from scratch in the hackathon. Over the 2 days, we're going to try and create a system, a domotic system, so that we have actual devices working in an erratic way, so that we can see possible incorrect physical functions and also on the logic side. We'll use radio frequency and Wi-Fi, and all those devices will be connected in order to be able to control activity and be able to notify that activity. We'll be monitoring all that activity, so in order to be able to receive the notifications through an app that's quite easy to use, either on a mobile or on our computers. The complexity of the project is mainly that there are many networks, and they are very heterogeneous, and controlling them is not easy. So the project aims to put them all into one group, all of those devices into one group, and to control them in an efficient manner. So that's our project, and thank you very much. Good luck to everybody.
Muy bien, pues nosotros somos CEL y vamos a
We are CEL, and we are going to present marshmallows. The team is Alvaro, who's responsible for communications, Manuel, who's responsible for the Internet of Things, and I'm Guillermo. I'm responsible for safety and authentication. We presented a project last year with a project called STUCK, and the aim of that project was to protect systems using a port knocking system. In actual fact, when we presented the project in real life, it wasn't successful. We were told that what they were looking for were the laboratories and universities that we thought might be interested in this. They said the following: having a network of devices is complicated if those devices are on different networks. They've got different IDs, and you need to have different passwords and authentication processes. So what we propose is a solution when you have several devices connected to a network, and the service would virtualize all of that network, and without knowing what the IP address is or in which cloud it is, would be able to manage that in a normal manner. And we would like to use that without the use of obsolete passwords. That will be just temporary passwords and just one use temporary passwords.
There are several parts. The first part is authentication. The user is connecting to the web, and this would be done through an API, and either the physical access and the password would say whether or not it's correct and give access to the application. Alvaro will talk a little bit more about this.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Pues,
although it's called administration, actually we're talking about usability of the application or the platform. It is installed as a private cloud from which any user who enters into the system can manage the devices into the system based on different roles. And he or she can gain access using the navigator. So this makes it much simpler to use. There is a cost of agents, and one of the key points and basic points for our solution is communications. The most relevant point is that they are used as communication, obviously, from one extreme to another, for the navigator to those devices, and we don't need to know IP addresses because the context is set in a virtual manner. Physically, there's no infrastructure for the network, but we do see it in a virtual manner in the clouds. We can have several clouds with different devices loaded up onto those clouds. And this is a way of virtualizing the elements. The communications channel is based on a protocol as an alternative to the TLS, so that the devices that are connected can be modified, and we will use these are not RSA codes, these are short codes of 32 bytes. There's interchange of keys in deferment, and perhaps with TLS we wouldn't manage to do this, perhaps. These are the technologies that we're going to work with in the back end. It will be Go Diamond, so that the entrance and exit can create those channels in terms of starting the session, so that we can make those connections for the transport. And we have databases, and we don't have a role in charge of the front end. We will develop that part of the web, and we've done that already. We have the noise framework protocol. This is a company that deals with WildWorld, with firewalls that use noise technology, but also WhatsApp in its communications and its security protocol. We also have the physical keys, which is UKeys, but the ideal thing would be for us to implement it ourselves in terms of the temporary keys. We'll use Trello and Slack in terms of management, and the platform, which is not dealing with the communications, will be certified. So from this point onwards, we'll start our work. Some of the components are already ready, and specifically the part of the web, which was one of the things that conditioned our result last year, and we'd like to make it a little bit more attractive this time. So that's it for now.
Hello, good evening. The idea we're going to tell you about is called Wi-Fi. We don't think it's very technical, but we do believe that this is a problem that affects many people, and it's how to securitize Wi-Fi. What is the best option for your Wi-Fi to be secure? I think I've gone over my slide, sorry. So who are we? I am Miguel, and I work with Esperanza, Fernando, and Santi. I am dealing with security, but we have Ghost front-end security developers. So we're a very complete team, and we hope this will work. So it happens to me very often that people keep asking or saying, oh, my neighbor is stealing my Wi-Fi, or my parents saying, oh, could you change my password? Why doesn't my Wi-Fi work better? And it seems that we're advancing a lot in security, that we apply many different measures and that we find best practices, but these are not implemented at home everywhere in the world. So maybe it would be better to not give that many options and just say, well, the most secure configuration is this one with these features, and implement it in at home everywhere. Because then you have cars scanning public or private Wi-Fis, and they are vulnerable, and you can launch massive attacks. So I think the best thing for these Wi-Fis would be to be as securitized as possible. So who is this intended to? Well, no one who's very techie. But basically, so my parents don't have to say, oh, configure my Wi-Fi, please, Miguel. Basically, that anyone can do it at home, so that the application says, okay, give me the credentials, we will check whether they are or not secure, and we will go step by step. So this is definitely something that's not intended for someone who's techie or knowledgeable, but it does improve security in our everyday life. Are there any other tools like these? When looking for tools like these, we find a lot of Wi-Fi pen testing or Wi-Fi hacking applications, but not so much for auditing or checklist for secure applications, but basically aircraft trying to deauthorize someone, just to see those packages and get the password. So we see that there's something missing there. Movistar launched one recently, but it's if you have Movistar, you have to download it and then you have to configure it yourself. But if I say that to my dad, he will say, well, I still don't know what I have to do, or what I have to input, or what kind of password I have to have, or does it have to be habilitated? How many characters does it have to have? So I think if you do that for them, then it's easier and it will avoid many problems. Sometimes you see that you have to hide IDs, and some others you don't. We're going to use Enfibe's guide, which is the easiest, and as we have it and it's very well structured, we think we'll use that one. And nowadays there's hardly any home that doesn't have a Wi-Fi access, so this is going to have an impact on everyone at homes everywhere in the world. How do you know that everyone in your building block has it well configured and that they are following the rules for security?
Bueno, como ha comentado mi compañero Miguel.
Well, as Miguel was saying,
todo el mundo sabe cómo securizar un
everyone knows how to securitize Wi-Fi, but I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because this can be very interesting. But how many of you have you actually started configuring it, even if you have the knowledge? Well, we want to develop that idea, and seeing the different companies that there are in the market, on the market, with different routers and everything, then we've had to land a little bit and see what we really could do. So looking into Enfibe's guide on Wi-Fi security, this is the most general thing, what almost everyone can do. People either don't know how to connect to Wi-Fi or don't know how to do it. So we have the password, the SSID, then the management password, then DWPS, which is less secure than firmware updates, and that's mostly updated by technicians when they come home, but we didn't really use it. And the type of cipher, then we can also filter by MACs or IPs, and also reduce Wi-Fi's potential. So we all have the maximum potential power so that we can use our Wi-Fi from the park, but that also means that hackers can access our Wi-Fi from very far away. So we've got many ideas, but this is the most realistic approach. So now my colleague is going to tell you how we're going to do it. Well, what we're going to use, because we want to be more realistic and take into account time constraints, we have brought a few routers that we have already prepared so as to avoid the different interfaces and see how every interface works. The project at the end of the day will be an application from phones, for computer desktops. We're going to do it in a way that allows us to do it really fast, and we're going to do the backend on Python, although ideally we would like for all this logic to actually be embedded in the application. And this is all. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Vale. Bueno, hola a todos.
Right. Hello, everyone. We're going to present what we have prepared for this hackathon.
Cuando hace un año así,
A year ago, more or less. Well, sorry. First of all, I'm going to introduce the team. We all come from Orange. When we started working at Orange, we saw that when I started managing all the assets, the audits that we were running, vulnerabilities, the process was always the same. We would run an audit, we would notify the person in charge of the application, they in turn would inform the developers. Once the developers identified the vulnerability, the head of the department would tell you, and then you would check that it had actually been corrected. So that was a lot of emails that were lost in time very often, and there were many things that went unchecked and undone. So what we did was to create a small application called Atlas. There was a web application where we were storing all the work that we were doing, the audits that we were running, the applications that we had in the company to have an inventory, and their vulnerability, so we could do a follow-up on them. Now, what was interesting about this, it was that this application was not used only for ourselves. We wanted developers to be able to use it as well, so that we had like an open communication channel amongst us, so that when we found a vulnerability, they could see it directly, and when it was solved, that we could see directly that it was done. I think now Mariano can take the floor to talk about architecture.
Buenas.
Hello.
Yo soy Mariano, soy el arquitecto de soluciones.
My name is Mariano. I am solution architect in Orange, Spain. I work with the other members of my team. And this application, as Gonzalo was saying, they started it some time ago, but we wanted to rethink it a little bit. So we started
fue
thinking
en hacer una aplicación
that we
web
could
escalable que además
have
estuviera
a web
pues, con todos los
application that was
principios DevOps que están
scalable
ahora
and
tan de
that
moda y
also
una
had
aplicación
all
que fuese
the principles that are
escalable,
so
que se pudiese
trendy right
gestionar
now.
bien,
That was
etcétera.
scalable, that it was easy to manage.
Vale. La arquitectura de la aplicación
So the
está basada
application's
en tres patas, que es
architecture is
el
based
frontend.
on three
Hemos
legs,
hecho tenemos hecho un
which is
esqueleto,
the front end. We have a
una
skeleton,
single page application
a
en
single
Angular 8,
page
porque
application
es un
in
framework que
Angular
te
8
permite
because
escalar
it's a
bastante bien.
framework that allows you to
Y utilizamos la
escalate quite
librería
well.
Clarity Design de VMware,
And we
que está muy
used
bien porque escala bastante
VMware
bien para
because
llevarlo hasta
it's
formato móvil también.
very easy
Para el
to
backend hemos
escalate even
desarrollado
on a mobile format.
y
For
vamos a completar
backend,
un microservicio
we
en Node.js
want
con
to
TypeScript.
complete a microservice
Y
with
utilizamos Express.js como
AJS,
framework
with
principal para el desarrollo de la
Express.js and
Utilizamos
MicroScreen,
también
and we
TypeORM
used
como
Express.js
conector
for
de base de
developing the
datos,
application,
que actualmente
and also
lo podemos utilizar
Type
para conectar con cualquier
DRM
tipo de base de
for our
datos. En nuestro
database that
caso,
we can now
vamos a
use to
utilizar
connect with
PostgreSQL.
any kind of
Y por
database.
último, la infraestructura,
And
tanto
finally,
el backend como el frontend
infrastructure,
lo vamos a
both
desplegar
the
en
backend
Amazon Web
and
Services.
front end are
La
going
base
to
de
be
datos
deployed on
también. La base de
Amazon
datos va a ir
Web
como
Services.
una
So will the
RDS,
database, which will work as an
y la aplicación la vamos a meter en
RDS,
Nginx y la vamos
and
a publicar
the
en Amazon
application
y
will
vamos a
be
meter un
on
microservicio
Nginx, and then
en
we
un
will go
clúster de
into apply it
Kubernetes.
to
Esto nos va a permitir
Microsoft.
que, como es un proyecto open source y la gente
And
luego quiere evolucionarlo
because this
y
is an
escalarlo,
open source
es una
project,
arquitectura
this
que
will
va
allow people to
a escalar perfectamente y se
work
pueden
with
añadir
it,
piezas
develop
sin
it,
tener que
escalate
quitar
it, and they will be
las
able to
anteriores.
add pieces without having to
paso
get
a
rid
mi
of the
compañero
ones that
Jesús.
were there before. And now I'll give the floor to Jesus.
Buenas tardes. Bueno,
Hello everyone. So why
Gonzalo,
this Atlas project?
identificar una serie de,
As
yo
Gonzalo
llamaría
was
incluso
saying,
carencias,
we
¿no?
identified
En nuestro equipo de desarrollo,
some
que
lacks
está
really,
trabajando con metodologías
because our
ágiles
development
y el
teams
equipo de ciberseguridad.
were
Entonces,
working with
pues bueno,
agile
lo que vimos es que una vez
methodologies
teníamos
and the
el
security
proyecto Atlas,
team.
que
So we
únicamente
saw
lo que
that
tenía
once
era,
we had
pues,
Atlas,
la vulnerabilidad, decíamos, puedes entrar aquí y actualizar el estado,
so
porque
imagine we would
se va
have
por correo.
vulnerability,
Totalmente reacios a
go in,
trabajar una herramienta
update
fuera
the
de su
state,
ciclo de vida,
but
porque
the
ellos ya tienen
teams were
sus
not
herramientas,
ready
como
to
voy a
work
entrar
with
en
a
las herramientas, a revisar,
tool that
y
was
no teníamos,
outside its
no
life
formamos parte del
cycle. They
ciclo de vida,
didn't
¿no?
want
Entonces, pues bueno,
to work
con
on
eso,
that because we were
con
not
esta
part
herramienta y
of
con la
its
integración que vamos a
life
hacer con
cycle.
Jira,
So with
subsanamos
this
todo
tool
esto. Luego, por
and the
otra parte,
integration we're going to do
como
with
estamos
Jira,
viendo, todas las noticias,
we solve all
las
these
empresas van a
problems.
invertir
And
un
now, as
30%
you've been
más en
seeing, companies are
ciberseguridad
going to
y ahí
invest a
identificamos dos
30%
cosas.
more
Vemos
on
grandes
cybersecurity,
corporaciones
and we're seeing two
con,
things.
con
One,
muchos recursos
big
que pueden
corporations with lots of
comprar
resources that could
herramientas
buy
brutales de los vendors más
massive
importantes, pero que luego van a utilizar un
tools, but
3% de la
who are
herramienta y
going
tú
to
estás
use
pagando ahí
only
pues igual el
3%
procesamiento en el
of
cloud, el
that tool. So you might be paying
etcétera. Y
for
luego, por otra
cloud
parte,
processing and licensing,
que
etc.
los equipos, un día son dos
And another
auditores
thing
y
we've
como
seen
la
is
gente está
that
entrando un poco en pánico, al día
teams,
siguiente
one day you
tienes
have
20
the
auditores, ¿no?
you
Y
don't have
entonces con esto
auditors, but
también,
now
pues
all of
bueno,
a sudden
con la
everyone
parte de
is
metodología
panicking,
que
and then
vamos
you
a
have 20
implementar,
auditors.
si
So
tú
with
tienes
the
un equipo
methodology that we're going
que
to
bueno,
implement, if
expertos
you
de
have a
todo tipo,
team
pues tienen unas pautas a
made
seguir,
of
¿no? Es decir,
experts in
tienes una
many different
herramienta donde tienes
domains,
el
they will
ciclo
have
completo,
different
hace una auditoría,
things
las
that they can do.
metodologías que
You will have the whole
se están
cycle
usando,
from when the audit is
posteriormente
being
le abres esa vulnerabilidad
launched,
al
then
equipo en
you
su flujo de
open the
trabajo y en el
vulnerability to the
formato en el
team
que
in
actualmente
its
están trabajando,
workflow and in the
por lo cual,
format
por
that
lo
they're
tanto,
working on
tienes
right now.
visibilidad
So
cuando se ha
you have
resuelto para
visibility
revisar si la
on when
vulnerabilidad
it's
está
been
correcta.
solved to check that
Y
it is
luego
actually
además,
so.
por el tema de los
And
equipos,
also,
perdón, del equipo de los auditores que también crecen,
concerning
vamos a
the
meter una
team
parte
of auditors, which is growing,
de
constantly
conocimiento.
growing,
Es decir,
we will
de
add
que
a
cuando se ha
knowledge
identificado una vulnerabilidad, que al final se utiliza
part.
luego
So
el
when
ROAS,
you
tienes un crossover,
identify
tienes un
a
SQL injection,
vulnerability,
poder meter en esos informes de manera
you will be
automática
able to add to those
cómo
reports
solucionarlo, que es lo que ayuda al
automatically
equipo de
how to
desarrollo, pues,
solve
ser
that
más
vulnerability, and
experto en la
that's where
parte
we will
de
help
seguridad.
the
Por
development
otra parte,
team
vamos a hacer también
on security.
una
And we also want to have report generation, because another one of the things that we see in companies is that when you invest in cybersecurity, you want to see that the company is actually safe. So it's useless to have a cybersecurity team, to have a SOC and not see results. So with this, what we want to do is to create a dashboard where we can see all the assets that we have, the vulnerabilities that we've found, the status of each vulnerability, and so you see what stage the project is in. How does this compare to other similar projects? Well, we've taken some commercial products and as well as open source products. And as you can see, we have tenable Acunetics when it comes to commercial products. We actually have Acunetics, and you do launch it. It's oriented to web applications. It's going to take at least 150 vulnerabilities or low-level vulnerabilities every day that no one is really going to deal with. It's very good, but its licensing costs are very high. So while we're trying to solve with this open source tool, you will have something to work with that allows you to keep working, and that it's not too expensive, because there will be companies that have a lot of resources, but some others won't. And if you go to your directors and you say, I need 30,000 euros a year for Acunetics to analyze vulnerabilities, they will say, well, no. And that's it. And that's the end of it. And when it comes to open source, we have Archery and Jackhammer. Quite powerful. Archery has an API, but it doesn't have a permission manager. And depending on the infrastructure, some vulnerabilities are even considered confidential, because until they are solved, they can put the company at risk. And this is the team. It's all of us who are here today, and just very quickly what we're going to be doing during this hackathon. Right now in Atlas, as Mariano was saying, we only have a structure in Angular where you can create an organization or company and audit vulnerability. It's not very well related, so we're going to generate this integration with Jira so we can actually get into the life cycle of development teams on a dashboard, so as to have that executive report that gives us an insight of the status very quickly. And we will have the different methodologies for every team, and then a knowledge base so that this goes faster. Thank you very much.
Hola, hola.
Hello.
Bueno, pues nosotros somos el equipo UH Taltech.
We are UH Altec, and we're going to develop IHS, Industrial Hacking Simulator. I don't want to go into too much detail, but let me introduce my colleagues. Alvaro Schuller, who will deal with pen testing. In fact, he has worked in a company in Lithuania in this field. And Nicholas Log, who is the expert in industrial matters in terms of hacking. He's a colleague of mine from the University of Alcalá. And then there's me, Carlos. I work in the University of Alcalá. In the university, that's Nicholas and me, and then we added in our other colleague. We are based around security in industrial environments. We've been talking about this over the last few years, and in fact, it's one of the talks that have been mentioned in CyberCamp. We were given a great presentation about industrial security, but in the end, they don't end up being 100% isolated and not fully safe. They should be, but they need to undergo a pen testing process. In fact, there have been actual real attacks of ransomware against industrial entities. This is a fact, and security needs to be part of these organisms. So our idea is to develop test beds on which you can work in an industrial environment without actually being in an industrial environment. You can do tests or pen testing like Alvaro wants to do. So we wish to virtualize a pen test where we can do practice and we can go in there and we don't actually burn anything. How are we going to do this? There is already a project which is Mini CPS, which is the basis of the project. It's a project that we like very much, and it has been used by scientists in order to do CTFs and so on. It's based on MiniNet. The issue with Mini CPS that I found as we're working is that it's in Python, and there's just about 1 month left before it's no longer existent. So it needs to be exported, and we've been looking into this issue, and we'd like to export Mini CPS and incorporate a program that could be used in industrial environments and recuperate this project, which was used in our PhD in 2017. So we'd like to bring it back to life and put it into Python 3. There's no sense for it to be elsewhere now that we're in 2020. We have a water treatment test bed as the basis, and it allows us to emulate an industrial environment and different situations in the environment, and this is the basis of the project, and we would like to create our own environments for water treatment or anything else that we come up with, or different sectors that we have time to deal with in the hackathon. We'll need for everything to work correctly because we need to emulate traffic and so on. Currently, it is working in Python 7, and we'd like to emulate other different kinds of scenarios in a water treatment plant. Gamification is very interesting in this field. In order to do that, we need to use CTFs. We'll be next to people using CTFs in the hackathon, so I don't know if they'll have industrial environments, but it could be used. It hasn't got many CPSs, and it's our own development. It can be gamified even more to deal with attacks to the industrial network. This is a project, and these are the ideas that we'd like to develop over the coming days. And here is some of the parts that we're going to use. And we have to set up the industrial environment, and it needs to be documented and show that we have been able to achieve this. So it's not just creating the environment, but documenting it and showing, and maybe use it as a pen tester, because to show that we work directly in an environment of this kind. In terms of visualization, it'll be something like this. It's with C++, and in the water treatment plant that we talked about before, we could use another system to make it a little bit easier. This would be a bit of the animation so that you can see if something goes wrong, so that you can make it a little bit more visual for the user, even though the attack is going on in any case. So how are we going to achieve this? It's in many CNSs in Python. We'll move on to Python 3. We'd like to be able to use everything, but we'll say what time we have to do that. We might have to put everything in Dockers and see how it goes. We'll also use a Flask. In terms of documentation, I mentioned GitHub. And we're going to use safe development systems. This is a hackathon, but it's good to include automatic tools. We may use a snake or bot that has a relationship with GitHub. So we'll use maybe some of the more known ones, and so analysis of the code. We also have the GitHub, and this would be a bit of a bonus. I don't need you to invite me to a beer or anything, so as long as it gets into GitHub, anything is another issue, the quality of the coding. So we'll have to have a look into this, so we'll solve the issues that come up. So all of this has to be done. We don't need to just talk about it, but actually do it. This is all we have. This is the link. Currently is nothing, but you will see that we will add things as the hackathon moves forward. Thank you. Good afternoon. We are a team that is Nerea, Jose, Coque, and myself, Ruth. And our proposal for this year is ASAP, Anti-Shoulder Surfing Attack Platform. So shoulder surfing is the issue that we would like to resolve with the tool that we're proposing. This is the first issue of ASAP that we presented previously in CyberCamp, and we'll see the development since Malaga up until now and the tool that we want to develop in the hackathon. So what is shoulder surfing? It's the issue that we'd like to resolve. It's a social engineering technique that allows the attacker to steal information from the victim and do so over the person's shoulder. That could be in a public place or on a train or using any device that you have, and the person is behind you and able to see what you're doing. And if you're using sensitive data such as passwords or bank details, they can use that information against you. There are different alternatives, and the main four that we came up with were these, but none of them convinced us, so we decided to develop ASAP. The alternatives are HP Sure View, Protectors hardware, Google eScreen, and Filters software. These are films that you have to go on top of the computer, and these are not interesting for the user because the images that are in the background, for example, in your mobile, and this is not easy to use.
The only software option that's available is the software filters. It's just a test of the concept developed by Google, and it's not available. And HP Sure View is available in some devices. So the tool that we have developed is called ASAP, and the shoulder surfing is what it aims to get rid of. It's developed for facial recognition so that if a person or several people are in front of a device, it works in a different kind of way. And this is what we presented in 2018. What are the characteristics? It's got a multi-platform. It can be used for Windows, Mac, and Linux. It has facial recognition, specifically SSD MobileNet version 1. And when there are several faces, there are different executions. It reduces the shine on the computer, or it blocks the computer, for example. The technology is Electron, Vue.js, and FaceOPL.js. We're going to use these technologies once again, and our challenge is to use algorithms for face matching for web technologies. This is a demonstration of what we presented last year. This is the screen of the tool. There's a blue box covering the face of the person that's using the device. In other words, it's detecting that person. Let's go to the operation. If somebody goes in front of the device, then that face is detected and there's an alert that comes up directly. This is another example, and as a result of detecting the face, then the shine on the screen has disappeared. So SAP that we started last year in CyberCamp and that we've been developing this year, we've improved the application, we've improved the interface, and it now no longer needs an internet connection in order to work correctly. This is one of the suggestions that we were given last year in order to improve the application, but we didn't have time to do that in the hackathon in March this year. It was presented in the Reuters conference in Madrid, and as a result there was a great deal of interest. And in April 2019 there were 2 new issues that we intend to resolve during the hackathon. There are certain limitations currently to the application because it only detects if there are more than one face, but it does not know if a face is authorized or not. The screen has to be visible all the time, and this means that this may not be easy to use in the day-to-day. It's also expensive, and the alert methods are currently quite limited, as we saw in the demo. Taking this into account, the options that we have for this year is to include a number of things, including face recognition, knowing which person have authorization to use the screen and use the device. And perhaps we need to change the configuration panel as a result of this, because we have the option of adding, editing, or limiting the number of people. And we would surely need to add authentication for this. We would also like to add new alert methods, such as through email, push notifications, integration with Telegram or Slack, for example. And also we'd like to improve the use of the app and to give some easy ways to use the functions, and making sure that the screen is much easier to use for the user. We'd like to improve the documentation so that it's easier to use and make a better contribution to the project. And we'd like to check to see if it's possible to expose the app through an API to give services to third parties, such as through the operating system. This is the repository for the project, and we intend to promote the project and improve the project during the hackathon. So that's everything from us. Thank you very much.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone.
¿Qué tal? Me llamo
Hi,
Juanjo
my name is Juanjo,
y os traigo por segundo año
and I'm
consecutivo
bringing you
el
for the
Guarded
second
Box.
year in a row
Es una aplicación que ya
Guarded
presenté el año
Box. It's an
pasado
application that I already presented for the
Y
hackathon
una cosa que quería
last
decir es
year.
que yo
And
suelo ir a
one
muchos
thing I would
torneos de
like to
ciberseguridad,
say is that
pero sin
I
duda el
do
que más me
take
gusta
part
es
in many cybersecurity
Entonces,
challenges, but the
dedicar
one I
unos
like the
segundos
most
a
is this one,
agradecerle
no
de verdad a la
doubt. So I would like
organización,
to use a few
al
seconds
CIBE,
to
al jurado
thank the organization in CIBE, the
muchas gracias
jury,
por darnos
and
todos la posibilidad de presentar
everyone, and thank you for giving us another opportunity to take part in this
Sobre mí,
tournament, which we like so
pues,
much.
empecé como
Now,
developer,
about me, I started working as a developer in a
me dedico a la
security
seguridad.
company for a
Ahora mismo
hotel.
soy
I've always
manager en
worked
KPMG
in security. I am
y
now
un
a
equipo
manager
de
in
auditorías sobre
KPMG,
aplicaciones,
and I
auditorías de
manage
código, tentes web,
team on
también móviles.
code
Y os digo esto
audits,
porque ayer
pentest
domingo
web,
me
and
preguntabais
mobiles.
si las
And I'm
empresas valoran
saying this because
que
you
los
were asking me
candidatos
yesterday
vayan a
whether
hackatones. Y yo os
companies
digo que yo
value the
sí lo valoro
candidates have
mucho,
been
¿vale?
to hackathons.
O
Well,
sea
I can
que
tell you
todos los
that
que
I
habéis
do
presentado, os habéis
value
presentado,
it. So
todos los que os habéis apuntado,
all
pues
those of you
habéis
who
elegido
have
bien. Enhorabuena.
decided to take part in
Pero
this
bueno, voy a
hackathon have
centrar ya
chose very
mi
well. So
propuesta.
congratulations. And now I'm
¿Qué es
going
el
to
Guarded
talk
Box?
about
Pues
our
Guarded Box
proposal.
es un gestor de
And what is
secretos
Guarded
online.
Box? It's
Y algunos preguntaréis qué
secret
leches es un
manager,
secreto.
online secret manager.
Un
And
secreto
what is
puede
a
ser una
secret?
contraseña, un
You will be
API, un
asking.
token de
It can be a
acceso, una tarjeta de
password,
crédito,
API
un código
key,
PIN, una
PIN
clave criptográfica.
code,
En general, pues cualquier
cryptographic
cosa que
key,
tiene cierto valor sensible,
anything
que
that
será secreto,
has a
pues es un
certain
secreto.
sensitivity and that we
Entonces,
want
¿dónde
to
lo
keep secret.
apuntamos?
So that is a
Pues en
secret.
post-its,
And
para que no se
what
nos
do?
olvide.
We write it on post-its,
No,
right? So
mala
that we
idea,
don't
¿no?
forget.
Hay que
No,
apuntarlos
bad
en post-its.
idea. You have to write it on notepads. No.
Vale, bueno, no, mala idea apuntarlo en post-its, mala idea
You
apuntarlo
shouldn't
en cualquier
write
sitio.
it down
Esto está en nuestro
anywhere,
esas cosas.
really.
Tenemos alguna herramienta que sí que nos puede ayudar
There
con
are
esto.
some
Puede ser
tools
el
that can
KeePass,
already
por ejemplo,
help
no la
us
conocéis.
with this.
KeePass,
KeyPass,
pues
for
es una
example, you
herramienta
may
que nos
know it.
permite guardar nuestros
This
secretos
tool
en un
allows
sitio
us
local,
to keep our secrets
cifrado
in a
con una
local
contraseña
file
maestra,
that
¿vale?
is ciphered
Tiene
by
algunos
a
problemas, como por ejemplo
master
la
password,
sincronización, ¿vale? Si yo
and it
quiero
has
hacer
some
uso de mis
problems
secretos,
or
pues,
issues such as
cualquier sitio, en cualquier
synchronization. For
PC,
example, if I
o
want to
en mi
use my
móvil o en mi tablet,
secrets
o
in
lo que sea,
different
pues ya me tengo
PC
que
or on
sincronizar el
my
fichero con el
phone or
KeePass,
tablet,
lo cual pues
then
es un
I
poco rollo.
have to
Y luego pues tiene problema de compartición,
use
que es que
this
pues, si yo, por
KeyPass
ejemplo,
file.
le quiero mandar a
And
mi
there's
madre
also
mi
an issue
contraseña del
with
PayPal
sharing,
para
because
que
if I
compre lo
want
que
to
sea,
send my mum
pues
my
bueno, se la
PayPal
puedo, le puedo mandar mi
password
fichero
so
con el
she can
KeePass,
buy something, I can send
pero le tengo que
my
pasar mi contraseña
KeyPass
maestra de alguna forma.
file, but then I have
Entonces
to
estoy
give
ahora
her
mismo se lo voy a
my
pasando
master
por
password.
WhatsApp,
So I'm going to
porque
end up
bueno, ya no sé
sending
eso.
it to her through
Entonces, si queremos
WhatsApp
solucionar estos
or
dos
Telegram.
problemas, nos
So
tenemos que
I'm
ir a
already
una
back at
herramienta
that
online.
risk.
Vale, aquí
So
os
if
he
we want
puesto
to
algunas
solve
que
these
existen en el
problems, we
mercado, como por
have to
ejemplo
use
son
an
las Pass,
online
Dashlane,
tool,
OnePassword,
and
estas
you've got a
son las
few
más
here on the
famosas,
slide, like
que hay
Pass,
más.
Dashlane, Password.
Y
These are the
estas pues
most
tienen
well known,
sus
but there are
problemas particulares.
more. And they all have their own issues. For example, they're not open source, so you cannot contribute, you cannot have faults, you cannot inspect the code, and this is obviously a lack of transparency. If you cannot check the code, then you don't know how to do things, so you start looking for information about how they do it, but sometimes it's just not clear. Yesterday, for example, I was looking for information on how 1Password derives your information through your passwords. They tell you how to do it, that they do some integrations, but they don't say where this comes from or what's the logic behind it. And you can try and do reversing on the application, but that is difficult as well. Most of them have a premium functionality, so you can always have a free account and manage your passwords. But if you want to do something a bit more complex, such as sharing your passwords, then you have to pay. And in some cases, security is, well, something to look into. For example, with LastPass, you can share your passwords, but when you look into the cryptography, it only talks about different things, and I just want to make it clear that my secrets are not out there in public, and I've had some security leaks in the past, and I don't like that. But sometimes there are mechanisms to reset your password, which makes me think that maybe the master password is stored in the device, so I don't like that. So what happens with Guarded Box? Well, first of all, it's open source, following or keeping up with the spirit of this hackathon. It's free. The idea is to have it online so everyone can use it. It's for individual users, for companies, it's for everyone. It's transparent to begin with because it's open source and you can look into the code, and also because I intend to generate documentation, and then we'll see. And it's also based on the best cryptographic standards of the industry. So, well, as you can see, it's all good. And how does this work? Well, in general, the user logs in with their password. The front end derives cryptographic keys, symmetric and asymmetric keys. And when we want to keep a secret for ourselves, it takes the symmetric key, it ciphers it on the client side, sends it to the ciphered encrypted server, and the next day we send the petition, we recover the data from the server, and we can decrypt it. If we want to do this for someone else, and that's where asymmetric comes into play, and you can ask for the application to decrypt information for certain users. So the particularity is that it is all used done from a client point of view, so it never sends cryptographic keys or anything of the sort, and it's never stored in the device. Concerning cryptographic components, I use different sources that you can see here on the slide, and I'm going to use, for example, ECC curve 25519 amongst others. Concerning technologies, I can use front-end React, Java. I know you're going to hate me, but well, some of you like Python, so you cannot really say much. Then my SQL, this will be deployed in Google Cloud. And now, as I said, I already presented this last year. It was more or less functional, but as you know, the projects from Hackathon sometimes need to be rethought a little bit. So I want to polish the code a little bit, and I'm also bringing a couple of new functionalities. I'm sure this has happened to you before. There are many auditors here. You do your audit, you want to send the report to the client, and you send it encrypted. So you encrypt it in zip, and then you send the password through WhatsApp, right? Or you just say to the client to give you your PGP public password, and they might either say, what? Or just say, oof, I can't be bothered. So basically, the secrets right now are text, but the idea is to be able to have files as well. And the second functionality is to create user groups so that, for example, an audit team or developing team can have access to the database password, among many other things. I also said I wanted to improve it a little bit and change it slightly. So one of the things that I want to do is change the RSA from last year to ECC this year, because RSA is quite slow nowadays, especially on front end. It would take about 4 seconds to generate small passwords and over 30 to generate a longer one. But ECC can have the same security but in less time. And also I want to bring a CAPTCHA system. I'm feeling a bit innovative because for some things I was using Google's CAPTCHA, but I don't like it because it's on the front and that's where I do other encryptions and I don't really trust it that much. So I have invented CAPTCHA based on cryptocurrency, and basically the front end sees a coin and back end has to verify it, so that if someone wants to force it, then it will cost them money in cryptocurrency. And this is more or less it. This is the repository for the code, and good luck to all the teams and thanks a lot.
Bueno, pues nada, muchas gracias a todos. Hemos acabado justo a tiempo.
Thanks everyone. We finished just in time, so we're going to go to the hackathon room now. Just 5 minutes if you need to use the toilet or anything. That's when we'll start with the question and answer round, which will be bonuses for the first stage, and all those questions that are good in terms of quality and assessment are going to be taken into account. So this is a very promising hackathon. Some of you have been here before and bring very solid projects, but we also have very new ideas with very interesting projects. So good luck and keep up the good work.